Asia is also the primary source of rising global energy demand. Demand for resources has created shortages and contributed to environmental degradation, both of which have increased frictions among neighbors. Increasing mobility among citizens, access to new sources of information, and rising disparities of wealth have created new strains in Asian societies. They're experiencing in decades processes that Western nations stretched out over centuries, and some are not well prepared to cope with this. Just as important, a new generation is rising throughout East Asia. This younger generation of leaders and business organizers have very different views than the elders who built so much. They look differently on respective national identities or the roles their country should play in regional and world affairs. In many instances, relationships with the United States are being significantly transformed. With generational change has frequently come rising nationalism, which creates its own set of challenges. An important strategic reality is that the classic continental and maritime balance of power, which seems so established in East Asia that we might have thought it was written on tablets of stone, may also be drawing to a close. For a long time, there has been this unique balance in which the continental powers of Asia, first the Soviet Union and Russia before them, and then the PRC, were unchallengeable within their vast land territory. In East Asia, China's continental mass was balanced off the coast of Asia and across the Pacific by the U.S.-led coalition of Asian littoral powers. The continental powers were safe from invasion thanks to large armies, vast territories, and nuclear weapons. U.S. friends and allies as well felt safer from invasion and maritime blockade thanks to the United States and allied air and sea power. This period of geostrategic stability provided an opportunity for most nations of the region, North Korea and Burma being exceptions, to focus simultaneously on internal political stability and economic development. For China now, with energy supply as a concern and with the proceeds of global trade as an engine, plus stimulation of nationalism and a strong sense of past mistreatment by foreigners, China's Navy and Merchant Marine are now increasingly prominent, even assertive maritime participants. There's a new sense of competition in the maritime environment, and we note the recent harassment of the U.S. naval ship Impeccable in the international waters off of Hainan, which are also within China's exclusive economic zone. This incident raises multiple questions of power and law and the junction of economics and politics. The implications of enlarged maritime realities are important for Taiwan and also for the USA and are being carefully watched by most of the other Asian players. Importantly, the United States retains both the desire and the ability to be a major source of regional stability and prosperity. Comments both during and since the presidential campaign suggest that the Obama administration will remain as committed to Asia-Pacific security as its predecessors. We can expect that the U.S. forward-deployed forces will continue to support deterrence and stability in the East Asia region. As the military budget comes under intense scrutiny in this new fiscal environment, presence will not be lost, but specific numbers of forces may vary without compromising the objectives. Administrations change, but national interests remain constant, and it's clearly in America's national security interest to remain fully engaged in the Asia-Pacific region. Intellectually, China does not oppose the U.S. role in Asian stability. There is appreciation that as a function of its alliance with the U.S., Japan has not needed to build up its forces as it would have done were it alone and afraid. The realization is, among Chinese academics and leaders, that an ungrateful North Korea's flair for combative instability has been at least deterred. But at the same time, nationalists would rather see the U.S. farther away. Chinese soft power has worked quite well beyond its borders, especially in Southeast Asia. inside China. One friend of Tibet told me recently that China seems to think, though, that soft power comes out of the barrel of a gun. At any event, the countries of ASEAN, Southeast Asia, have benefited by supplying raw materials and partially finished goods to China, and they've enjoyed Chinese goods and the smiling diplomacy that marks China's usual face to them. But few are under illusion that a harsher side might appear some future day. Energy shortages or raw material supply lines could spur something sooner. At any event, to most Southeast Asian governments, the familiar presence of U.S. forces has continued to be even more welcome than the access to U.S. markets has been essential. Codes of conduct, for example, have taken China's vast territorial claims to the South China Sea off of front pages, but most Southeast Asians realize the claims are only in abeyance now and might be reasserted quickly. I'd offer a few comments here, just sort of extemporaneously about Taiwan's regional neighbors. Everyone, and that certainly includes the USA, is suffering in the present economic climate. Japan is undergoing a period, I'm afraid, that could be of prolonged political stasis. The administration of Premier Aso is very likely to lose the elections that have to be held within the next 6 months. But Japan, we have to keep in mind, has many strengths. It has well-trained and well-equipped armed forces in the sense that were any military measures made by China toward Taiwan, such would be very close to what might conceivably be used against Japan. This is very well understood by those in Japan who are concerned with their security. Moreover, Japan is highly conscious of its dependence on imported energy and raw materials and the sea lanes that pass so close to Taiwan. Concern is often focused on the conflict over gas exploration by China in an area of conflicting EEZ claims in the East China Sea. Alliance questions between the U.S. and Japan, especially Okinawa troop levels, are seemingly resolved, but they seem to go on and on and on without ever being conclusively taken care of. For North Korea, in the news now with their threats, they seek survival and feel that they dare not reform economically as others have in Asia. So they seek attention as a means to extort food or fuel or money on which they are now primarily dependent for China for these sources. Unlikely to give up all of their nuclear weapons, but facing also a very uncertain political transition. So this is a locus of instability in the Asia-Pacific region that we have to keep in the back of our minds. In South Korea, President Lee Myung-bak's popularity has ebbed, but his reciprocity policy towards North Korea has been quite well received. Growth has tumbled in South Korea, in a country that felt it had cleaned up with its 1997 problems. It had cleaned up, but credit problems and export sales collapses have hurt deeply. I will take a few minutes to summarize some of the section concerning Taiwan in the new strategy report that we put out. This was not something to define the strategy. It's not even a report that every single author agrees with every single word. It's not a consensus document. But it is an attempt to say that, hey, there needs to be one spot where we do write this up and perhaps shame or stimulate the Obama administration into putting one together that will have that kind of official standing. And if so, we hope it'll have a lot of the ideas we have now.